It's Sports Bizarre.
There's a lot to like in this story.
Keeps getting more ridiculous as it goes on.
The hunt for the weirdest.
What are you talking about?
Are you serious?
What? So many questions. Okay, I'm going to have to stop you here.
Strangest.
This is a masterpiece of stupidity.
It's going to get stranger and stranger.
I'm quite exhausted.
Most unbelievable.
If you wrote this as a movie, people wouldn't believe it.
Stories to ever
An
occur.
epic tale of woe, joy, nutty behaviour.
The fact that it's not more well known is just the strangest
In
thing.
the world of sport.
This is going to get juicy here, isn't it? We should open a window or something.
Sports Bizarre.
How many testicles did he have?
8. Found running naked down a major street in Chicago. This, of course, is the last time organised crime and boxing have crossed over.
Got up in a press conference. We're here to announce we've swapped our wives.
What is going on?
It's time for the leaders of the hunt.
Not household names for me. But...
Surely a red flag.
It's Titus O'Reilly and Mick Molloy.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of Sports Bizarre with myself, Mick Molloy, and, of course, Titus O'Reilly. I'm frightened to ask what you're bringing to the table this week after last week's monkey testicle fiasco.
We had monkey testicle, then we had 1900 Paris
That's
Olympics.
right, that's right.
Someone
yes.
wrote to us this week and said that you and I were like an old couple who've got our spark back.
Maybe we should do this podcast with blankies on our knees.
It is the monkey testicles.
We've crossed the line. We're in it now. What have you got for us this week?
Well, this one is it's a very different one. I think you'll know this story, but we'll build up to it. And it's one of the stories that just, no matter how many times I've heard this, it's just so eye-opening to what sport can be like.
Yep.
So we're going back to November 2000, and we're going to the German city of Bonn, which is famous for, birthplace of Beethoven. It's the former...
Steeped in history.
Former capital of West Germany, all this. And a curious package shows up in Bonn, which in itself isn't rare, I would imagine. I mentioned this as a major city.
So far, so good.
But Bonn is less famously the headquarters of the Paralympics.
Okay.
And this package shows up at the Paralympics headquarters. Now, that's fairly regularly sort of thing. But at the time, the Sydney Paralympics had just finished.
Yes.
And you might know where I'm going with this story already.
I just love this story for so many reasons.
So they didn't realise the package importance, right, when it shows up, because they're all celebrating how well the Sydney Paralympics have gone, which is one of the biggest ever. And you got to remember, it's a huge step, the Paralympics and the growth of it, to now be a significant, huge event globally.
Yeah.
Right up there with the World Cup and the Olympics themselves,
Sure.
and sort of size and money flowing into it and everything is amazing, because they started in the aftermath of World War II, the Paralympics. So a lot of people know the Special Olympics and the Paralympics and don't know the difference.
Okay.
But the Paralympics are...
Please explain.
Well, the Special Olympics were more set up for people often with disabilities and things like that, but it was much more, let's get everyone together and have fun.
Right.
The Paralympics is pure competition.
It's hardcore competition.
No one there wants pity or,
No.
they just want
They've come to win.
and they're just pure athletes. And so it's all started back in 1946. There was a neurologist called Dr. Ludwig Gutmann, who he organised a competition in England for athletes using wheelchairs, because so many of them had come back from the war injured, and he was looking after them. He was rehabilitating people. So he invented these games. He himself had escaped Germany.
Yes.
He was a Jewish doctor in Germany before the war started, which wasn't a great place to be.
No.
And in early 1939, just as the wars kicked off, he thought, I'm in trouble here. But the Nazi Party, I don't think fully knew who was Jewish at this stage, said, we want you to go treat our friend, the Portuguese dictator Salazar, a friend of his, because he's not well. Can you go? So he got to Portugal and legged it.
Hey, of course he did. You want me to get out of here? All right. Wait a check, please.
So it was just like this. So he got to Portugal, legs it to London. London said, we'll grant you sanctuary, because this was long before Brexit. They liked welcoming people from overseas.
Yes.
So he hosts some of these first ones in 1946. By 1960...
So just to recap, these are the Paralympics.
Yeah. So the first ones just in 46 it was really just some games between people with wheelchairs and stuff, but it was sort of got the seed of starting this movement. And by 1960, just 14 years later, the first official Paralympic Games occurs. They're in Rome. 400 athletes from 23 countries go. It's starting to really grow. By the 2000 Games in Sydney, many years later, it's got 4,000 athletes, 127 countries competing across 551 events across 20 different sports. So it's huge.
Opening, closing ceremonies. It's the full
thing.
Kit and caboodle.
Suddenly there's money, there's sponsorship, there's television deals. It's, a huge thing. So there's pressure as well. So this package arrives in Bonn just after the Sydney Olympics, which are just huge Paralympics. And they open up this box, the people in the Paralympic officers going, what is this? And in it they find a Spanish Paralympic uniform, a gold medal from the Games, and £150, which was the exact amount each athlete was given while at the Games to sort of feed them and do stuff like that. And so they start thinking, why has this box got, someone's given up their gold medal, it's a gold medalist that's done this, and returned all their mementos from what should be like a highlight of their life.
It should be above the mantelpiece or behind glass.
Straight to the pool room.
Straight to the pool room.
So it took a while to actually figure out what this is. So to get to how this box showed up, let's go back to a guy, one of my favourite people in sport ever, and I think you're going to really like this guy. His name was Fernando Martin Vicente.
Okay.
So he was a man of many lengthy titles and significant powers across Paralympic sport.
Sure.
He was the head of the Spanish Federation for Mentally Handicapped Sports. He was the president of International Sports Federations for Persons with Intellectual Disabilities. He was the vice president of the Spanish Paralympic Committee and a member of the International Paralympic Committee. So you think about it like...
Wow. He's wearing a few hats.
His business card was like
that's right.
It was pretty big. He was also the father of a child with an impairment, and he'd founded the National Association of Special Sports all the way back in 1975. And basically, he'd do anything to advance Paralympic sport. So
he was pushing it.
He's pushing it. And in many ways, you can see where he's coming from, right? In many ways, his motives were good.
Okay.
Some of what he does is less of that.
Right.
There was an argument as well, even before this all went down, that it wasn't all purely his involvement in Paralympic sport wasn't all benevolent, because he owned a yacht, 8 cars, Porsches, all that sort of stuff. He had 5 houses and at least half a dozen large pieces of land. So it had been sitting on all these bodies had been very lucrative for him. He'd also been a Madrid city councillor. But it was really across, that didn't make him much money. The Spanish newspaper El Mundo says that his roles across all these sports with disabilities, portfolios and stuff, had made him a £5 million fortune. So
there you go.
So the Paralympics,
he's a
at this
mogul.
point,
He's a Paralympic mogul.
So this thing, the money is important, because for Vicente, suddenly Paralympics is, it started off as a way of rehabilitating World War II veterans.
Yeah.
By this point, it's big business.
Sure.
It's a serious focus and everything. So he's got huge sponsorship deals with multinationals like Telefonica and BBVA, which is a big bank.
Yep.
And they're always front of mind, because if Spain do well at the Paralympics, the money comes in from government and from sponsors.
As it is in the normal Olympics.
Yeah, and
the
if
more
they
success,
do badly...
Yep.
So that cycle of 4 years, like a lot of pressure. So he's always looking at that. And he's always found ways to sort of push it. So to keep pushing the success for Spain. So in preparing for the 2000 Games, Vicente, his eyes turned towards a new category that's been allowed into the Olympics. And for the first time ever, basketball for the intellectually disabled is going to be included in these games. So it's a new thing. Now, for people who are intellectually disabled, the rules for the sport weren't changed that much. So the games were a little bit shorter in length, and the lines were moved in a little bit on the court, but that was it. In every other ways, the rules were exactly the same as basketball. The only major difference was to qualify, players needed to have an IQ below 70. So that's the official measurement.
The cut-off line, sure.
Yeah. So to put that in perspective, just 2% of the American population meet that criteria.
Right.
Although it doesn't stop you becoming president.
Okay, it's a bonus.
So you're talking a very small group of people, right? So that's sort of the thing. Now, this is the first time because mentally impaired athletes they'd first been allowed to compete in the Paralympics in 1996, only 4 years before. And that had been a huge step for the Paralympic Committee, because if someone's missing an arm, it's hard to fake. You know, these things are
The empirical evidence suggests that you have a handicap.
Yeah, it's most of the things they've dealt with impairments before are physical. They can be sighted. They can be measured easily. You know, that's angles, degrees, all that sort of stuff. So it's not, they're not struggling to prove it. But the problem they suddenly have with this, and why they've only done it in 1996, is that faking your impairment mentally is easier to do. Is to pretend you're more mentally impaired than you are.
Okay.
So can you see the idea forming here?
I know where you're going with this. It's incredible.
So they start to look at this and you think, well, okay, but surely that being the case, you would assume, therefore, knowing that it's harder to just be able to measure and test and prove, that there would be a more intense vetting process you would assume would be in place, to do that. And that's the first mistake anyone would make, because there was no official test or review
So I have to come up with
in
one.
place. Well, they just left it to the individual countries to just basically say, yep, that guy's mentally impaired. That's how they basically, sewn into this is a recipe for disaster.
Sure.
But at the same time, people would think, yes, but why would you cheat at the Paralympics?
What motive? How badly do you want to win a medal at the Paralympics is my question to you. How much does it mean to you, to national pride, I don't understand.
Well, this is the difference too, is, some cheating you can understand. So Lance Armstrong wins the Tour de France, you become a multi-millionaire and you get to date Sheryl Crow.
Tick.
Tick, tick.
I'm in. What do I have to do?
So straight away, you can see. And
I only have one testicle, but that's enough to satisfy Sheryl Crow.
I would sacrifice my left testicle.
That's to be in this position.
How we bring up testicles 2 podcasts in a row?
No. Here we go. It's a motif.
So that's the sort of thing, like, where there's this thing of but it just shows you that the pressure on the bodies that run these sports is because the money is coming in now. And because Paralympics are so, for the athletes, so competitive, athletes will do almost anything normally, to win, whether they're disabled or not. They're going to try and win, right? So there'd been cheating in the Paralympics before, but this is one where it's a lot harder, because they suddenly they don't put anything in place. The determination of if someone is going to be classed as mentally impaired, so remember under 70 IQ, is left to the countries.
There's your first mistake.
I know.
There's the first loophole.
Well, and this also happens in the Olympics a little bit with the drug testing. Like Russia's whole thing is they were doing all their drug testing and kept clearing everyone outside of the Olympics in the off years. And eventually the Olympics said, well, we need to review this. But for a long time the Russians were marking their own homework, right?
Yep.
So they were meant to review, all the countries meant to review every bit of readily available information, including educational documents and doctors and psychological assessments and all this sort of stuff. But this works about as well as letting the banks self-regulate, right? Like, in that it just doesn't work.
Open to abuse.
Yeah, I mean, we've all been in this situation. Remember when you're at school and the teacher would say, I'm going to spot out, and then everyone be quiet. And sure. No worries, we'll do that. So this is what starts to form in Vicente's mind, which is, what if he finds decent amateur basketballers and gets them to pretend to be mentally impaired?
To fake how intelligent you are.
Yes. So basically, he wants to teach them to fake being mentally impaired.
Wow.
But they're actually quite good at basketball.
Dumb it down.
Really dumb it down. So this is it's the reverse of reality TV, where dumb people try and pretend to be smart. So he thinks, I just need to find willing accomplices, like people who are willing to do this.
Able-bodied athletes who are prepared.
Yep, so they're able-bodied and they mentally have no impairment. So, you know, they can think steps ahead and things like that, which is the difference between a lot of this is the thing that some of the basketball coaches point out later on in this is they say the way they moved and passed the ball to each other and knew what they were doing and spacing and all this. If you're mentally impaired, and the whole reason you have this sport for mentally impaired people is there's things like that they can't do. It's beyond them. So, you know, it's a different game. But this is so you're going to have a big edge if you've got people who really
That's right.
think several steps ahead, do all these different things, right? So he thinks, well, how can I, you know, if I can find willing accomplices, I can then get the necessary approvals all ticked off by all the organising committees I oversee, and the medical certificates can just be faked, and we can do all of that. And suddenly, like, the idea is we could really do well in this sport. Yeah. So it's an innovative thinking that you don't usually find outside of sort of a bank or Cricket Australia. And the hard bit, though, is you'd think would be finding... I mean, wouldn't you think...
Someone willing to do it.
Well, if someone says to you, Mick, how would you like to stop a Paralympian who's truly a Paralympian winning their dream of a gold medal for you to sneak it? I mean, who says...
Listening. I'm all ears. I'm prepared to... As I said, how badly do you want to win a medal? All right, yep.
Now, the thing is, you'd think this is really hard to find people to go along, but depressingly, it just wasn't.
No.
This is the bit that depresses me the most, right? So it raises an obvious question, which I want to put to you, which is an awkward one of how to answer this, is how much money would it take for you to agree to crush the dreams of an intellectually impaired Paralympian? Which is a question you probably didn't expect waking up this morning to be asked.
I'll write a number down on a piece of paper and I'll slip it to you, and then you can write another number and slip it back.
Yeah, you're smart enough to go, I'm not giving you the opening bid, you know.
No.
All right. And the thing is, you probably, because you've never...
Do you get your agent to do it? Is your agent doing it on your behalf?
I know.
Well, I tell you what, how dumb do you want him? How far has he got to go here?
Well, because the thing is, you don't. When you think about it, you know, you don't know how much you're going to do this right, because you know it's not great. You don't know the market rate for this. You don't know the market rate.
No, that's right. Yeah.
For defraud the Paralympics, right? Like,
there's no precedent.
So there's no precedent. So you're thinking about that, and you know, and it's embarrassing because you don't want to charge too much and price yourself out of the market.
No, that's right.
Because that would be embarrassing, wouldn't it?
That'd be terrible.
But also, you don't want to price yourself too low and then find out when you're playing. You say to the guy next to you, how much are you doing this for?
And it'd be disrespectful to the impaired guy's position who you took. I mean, if you're doing it for small coin, think of him. Jesus.
That's right. So,
all right.
So you really want to know that, you want to know that it's going to be going all right, because the morale of the team needs to know you're all on similar money, I think, to make it work. So luckily, the 10 men who signed on all agreed that to do this was about 150,000 euro each, which works out to about 240,000 Australian dollars each.
Okay.
So not nothing. You know, it's quarter of a million, sort of in, you know. So that's sort of. So if you ever get asked,
and potentially a gold medal, I would have thought.
And you get a gold medal, and you get a trip to Sydney.
There you go. You live the high life.
Isn't that good though? Any of us who's listening to this podcast, it's always been an educational podcast. If you ever get asked this now, you know where to. You know what to charge. So they all sign up, and they're told that the other way they say is, one, here's a lot of money. Two, they say they're all told, which is the oldest trick in the book. You'll know this one. Every country does it. It's okay.
You're doing nothing wrong.
You're playing against the same guys. No one is intellectually impaired. So
they're dumbing it down too. Yeah, don't you worry.
Don't you worry. Right. That it's all normal. What it actually is about, you're actually helping Paralympic sport, because by putting on a better spectacle and winning, you'll attract more money into the coffers of the sport, and therefore that's better for the intellectually disabled. So they give this kind of twisted logic of while they do it. And so they, once the team's assembled, they actually start training, which has to be the most pointless.
Have they decided what their IQs are yet, though, or do they all have to have the same IQ? Or are they ranging in high 60s to low 60s?
Yeah, well, I think they range it and I assume there's I think under 50 of them they stop counting, basically. It's like I knew a few guys that went to school and they got their end of school, you get a score. It's all called different things depending on what state you're in. But there was this point where it just went like 40 or less or something. Like you didn't actually...
I've seen that scene from Reservoir Dogs where they argue over who's Mr. Pink and who's Mr. Blue. You go, well, why can't I have an IQ of 68? Why does mine have to be 59? He's a 62.
I know. Because they all have to then... They say they get sort of taught how to come across.
Oh, my God.
And there's a point where...
What, you mean they take, like, acting classes?
Well, it's more like how you would answer certain questions or not answer. And then there are also a few times...
These are like Hollywood actors who play characters with a disability. Who do you get in? You get in...
It is. It's taking the roles, right? Like,
my God.
So
we're going to teach you how to have a slight...
Yeah, how to, and so there's one bit where two guys, apparently, when they've been driven around in Sydney in the back of one of the buses, so there's these shuttles that go around, that drop athletes off at places and everything, and two of them are in a few of these Spanish basketballers are sitting in the thing, and two of the guys are having a chat, and like the level they're talking about, life and what's going on, and one of the other guys turned around and go, mate, you got to stop talking.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a conversation that people with this IQ are having,
Can
right?
you Forrest Gump it up a bit?
Yeah. Could you? They're literally being
Do they
told
all have a
that.
backstory? Like, you were injured in the war, you got hit in the head by a shell.
I don't think they went to that level. But I'd like...
You watched back-to-back episodes of 2.5 Men. That's your
I watched
thing.
all seasons.
I did a marathon.
I like how your first thing is, you're like an actor. What's my motivation?
What's my motivation? What's my backstory? How dumb am I? Is dribbling too much? I don't know. Where am I?
I just love
Sean Penn takes a class on how to...
It's like, I'm getting paid so well, I'm going to do a great job for you guys. I'm really going to learn my role. Do you need me to talk with this? What am I doing? So this gets us...
Am I like Lenny from Mice and Men? I don't know.
I've been watching a lot of... I've been doing my research.
Could I be like a Rain Man where I appear dumb, but I can count cards?
Yeah, I'm just really good at one thing.
Oh, my God.
I know. I've watched Rain Man 8 times preparing for this game. So they start training.
They have practice or rehearsal. What's more important for these guys? Come on, guys, get into character.
Yeah, was it 3-point shooting, or are we going to sit around and do backstory? So they actually start training, and some of the players even participate in warm-up tournaments to get ready, which is to me an insane level of dedication to when you're effectively going to just be so much. It's like if you and I knew we were going to go play cricket against a bunch of 6-year-olds.
Yeah.
So we went down to the nets
just to make sure,
just to get our eye in. Like,
it's like the Globetrotters going, look, we've got the Washington Generals this week, but you never know, they might just jump us. Can we practice extra hard?
Stop mucking around, guys.
That's just as big a cheat. The Washington Generals. I'm pretty sure.
You reckon what? That it's not?
Well, I don't want to use the word rigged.
You reckon it's rigged?
Well, I'm just saying they haven't won for a long time.
I know, but and they seem to lose it. I mean, next you're going to be telling me wrestling's not real too.
Well, I'll tell you this. I think the IQ is genuinely under 70 in that department. Okay, so where are we? They're doing warm-up tournaments.
They've warmed up
for
and they're ready.
Paralympics.
And in the warm-up tournaments, they win by a fair bit. You'd be surprised to learn.
So they're coming in hot.
Yeah. So then we get to the 2000 Sydney Paralympics. So they've kicked off. The Sydney Olympics have just been on. Huge event.
Yeah.
Massively successful. The Sydney 2000 Paralympic Games are just as well received.
Yes.
Really well done. In that year, it was the second biggest sporting event in the world that year. This gives you the idea of the size of it.
Yeah.
There's sponsorship deals with Visa and Nike and all these sort of things. Yeah, it's 3 weeks after the Summer Olympics, and so it's huge things. For the inaugural basketball for the intellectually disabled tournament, 8 countries were involved. Russia, always above board. Poland, Japan, Brazil, Australia, Greece, and Spain. So they're the ones. So alongside the 10 players and the Spanish team participating in the scam,
yes.
So 10 of the players, there are another 2 who did actually meet the IQ requirements. So they kind of kept 2 in to sort of be able to. But 10 out of the 12.
They bought the doctor's certificates.
Yeah, they're the ones that
you
they
get
did the
out
press
there.
conferences to make sure no one stuffed up. But
Well,
that
they
was
in the
literally
starting 5 at least.
yeah. Now, very quickly becomes clear that having a team of people without intellectual impairments gives you a real advantage when playing
kidding?
against a team of people who do have them. Isn't that surprising? We never needed,
my God.
I don't think we needed to test this, but it's nice we know. And so in the first game against Portugal, the Spanish were up by 30 points at half-time,
Righto.
leading the coach to warn his players, lads,
Easy, Tigers.
move down a gear or they'll figure out you're not disabled. That's his half-time
That's his
speech.
address. Take a knee, boys. Look.
Isn't that great?
Oh, yeah, stick the ball up your jumper or something and run around in circles just for a minute. Come on.
Like he's literally having to go, you need to calm down, guys. You just stop the dunking. So, and it's just such a male thing to you're actually doing a fraud. But you can't.
still-
It's still so much fun to dunk on someone or to like be a bit of a sports hero. Like it is exactly the dad at Christmas who's playing cricket in the backyard
And
who
he's
just
hoiking 'em.
He just has to hoik one because and still feels sort of good even though it's his 5-year-old son bowling.
That's right.
There's something always fun about that.
I love it. Yes.
So they
Who else is in the conspiracy? So there's 10 players. And
10
how many
players.
people outside of
Well, we
that?
don't. We'll get to how well we know because it's a bit limited to how well we know, and Vicente gets in a lot of trouble for this. So, but I
after the first-
imagine a few knew because the coach obviously knows because he's calling them in to say
Stop it.
stop it. So they're up by 30 at halftime, and in that game, because the players get told off, they win by only 15 points. So they obviously really took the foot off the accelerator in the second half.
Sure.
But still, they
So
find
no one's alert to this
No
at
one's
this
alert at this stage.
They got away with the first game.
Well, the problem is, it was so hard not to win. Like, they were just so much better that they get lazy. So they beat Brazil by 56 points. They beat Japan by 67 points.
My
And they
God.
beat Poland by 30 points.
Okay, it's getting silly
So
now.
the tournament, they just blitz through the tournament. So this sets up a gold medal match against Russia. And this is the problem, is it just teaches you that if you're going to cheat at anything, don't win by too much or you do start to attract.
It drew unnecessary tension.
Yeah, one of the most interesting stories I ever got told when I in a previous job was I was talking to a guy who's head of security for a big corporation.
Yes.
And he said the surefire way that they find out someone. So if he joins a new company and has to do like all the security measures and look into the company, first thing he pulls is the leave records for all the top employees, and anyone who hasn't taken hasn't taken leave for years instantly becomes a suspect because people who are committing frauds don't tend to want to go on holiday because that's when they get discovered. So he said that
So
always
what could
happens.
on the surface appear your most diligent worker who's committed the
Is
most.
really they've got a system set
It's
up of
raking your
it,
till.
whatever they're doing and the minute someone else
Wow.
comes in and goes, I better pay this invoice or better, they suddenly go, hang on, none of this makes any sense.
I can safely say that
This is
I won't be the target of any attention around this joint.
No, you are the safest
You're lucky
pair of hands.
you're lucky I turned up today.
So they're drawing attention, which is what you don't want to do in a fraud, right? You want to kind of be very diligent, but they start to do it. But the temptation to block shots and dunk on people is just way too much for them. One Australian coach who's coaching Australia in this tournament, he said that he suspected that many of the teams had at least a few players
Borderline.
who weren't intellectually disabled, or more, even more. He said there were 2 or 3 players from both Spain and Russia. These are the two about to play in the gold medal game who could have competed in our national basketball league. Which I don't know whether he's bagging the NBL or he says what they did.
Andrew Gaze would be close to 70 on the IQ. I reckon he could possibly pay for our national team and this team, if I'm allowed to say that. I will. But to me, that's the difference between systematic doping and doping. So say systematic doping is when it's state sanctioned, right? But what you're talking about is saying, well, each team might have had one, but they're lone wolf operators, right? They're not saying, we know he's way smarter than that.
Oh, I think they are the ones.
Oh, they're just a blind eye.
No, I think...
Which would get you into the team, by the way, I'm guessing. You turning a blind eye, or do you have a blind eye? I don't know.
What can you...
What is
can
it?
you pretend to be blind? That would be fantastic.
Here's an eye patch. Get out there.
So he said, this is the Australian coach, and what they did with and without the ball was way above what any of our athletes could have achieved. So you say just the gap between someone who's in legit intellectual data and what those guys were doing, they could tell. And the Russians, they're used to bending the rules in international sport.
Yes.
So, but Spain's cheats turn out to be better than Russia's cheats, and they win the gold medal 87-63. So Vicente's plans worked. Yeah, it got a bit tighter. Vicente's plans worked. Spain had won the gold medal. They're on top. Sydney turned out to be Spain's most successful Paralympics across the board. They finished third on the medal table, winning 107 medals overall after Australia and then Britain. So it's a wonderful story of success for Spain. And they celebrate like it's a huge win.
Yes.
Yeah, they were like literally...
Oh, wow. I'd like to see footage of this game because it sounds like it would have been a cracking standard.
Well, just for what you'd be expecting. The Paralympic athletes, though, often point out that they don't really get much media coverage.
Right.
The problem for this Spanish Paralympic basketball team, they win, they're all happy, and the problem after their victory is the daily Spanish sports newspaper Marca decides to run a big picture of the team on the back of page, like a full big picture, and they're all smiling and celebrating, even though they've just done this rather horrible thing.
Yeah.
And of course, back in Spain, people reading Marca, they recognise the players, and they kind of, some of these people go, well, I dated that guy. He's emotionally disabled. He's not intellectually disabled.
He has many problems.
He's an alcoholic and he's lost his license and he's done this, but he's a relatively...
Needy. I know he's needy, but I don't know if he's intellectually handicapped. Wow.
He's demanding.
Okay, so the jig's up here. So questions are being asked?
Yeah, there's a bit of... Readers start leaving comments under the online version of the article going, hang on, and it starts to be a bit like... So rumours start swirling that something's not right, and word gets back to the team in Vicente in Sydney.
Yeah.
Just be careful, there's a bit happening. So he, but you don't trap a mastermind like Vicente easily.
What's he do?
He advises the players to wear hats and sunglasses so they won't be recognised at the airport on their return.
Put this ice cream container on your head.
Put this fake mustache on.
Yeah, you wear a cap with antlers.
Yeah. So he says, well, there's one picture of you on the back, but if we put sunglasses and hats on when you go through the airport,
so
if there's
now
any
disguising themselves.
Yeah, it's hard for people
this
to tell.
This is the greatest fraud in history. They've dumbed it down to win the gold. Now they're disguising themselves to get out of the country with the booty.
How funny is how every fraud always has a sunglasses and hat stage, and how quickly people get to that? Like almost every single one.
Oh wow!
So they do this, and because I just think the minute you get down to the sunglasses and hat stage of a plan, it's game over. Amazingly, the rumours die down. No media picks up on it.
They're getting away with this.
And they've got away with it. And Vicente's...
Nothing from the other coaches or teams at this stage. It's all Italians, Spanish, recognising.
It's all that. And with the Paralympics, people... Unfortunately, unlike the Olympics, they don't tend to dwell on it for not many people could say, "Oh, I remember when Australia won this in the Paralympics."
48-hour news cycle, and then we move on.
It sort of moves on fairly quickly, right? And the focus moves away. Vicente's seen as a guy who's once again delivered an incredibly successful Paralympic team. Has come third on the medal tally, even though it's in another thing. So, suddenly the money comes in, another house, another Porsche, it's all there. And he's got away with it.
This is like blood diamond money, though, really, isn't it? This is how despicable this whole pursuit
Well,
is.
yeah, because there's that thing where you... But the thing I would think is it's sort of... It's exactly the same as the Olympic movement, how they all get rich off that. Because the Paralympians are very big on... there's this thing, and I think it comes out of either a lack of knowledge or the thought of the Special Olympics of these are all these sort of sad people we need to look after and have pity for.
Yeah.
Where the Paralympians are just hardcore athletes.
They go.
They just full on, right? So they don't want any. So the fact that there's just exactly like the Olympics. It's just created an industry, and we have to do a podcast on Olympic corruption at some point.
Yeah.
Because it's
and
just
FIFA, the FIFA,
and FIFA corruption.
The FIFA Ethics Committee, it's my favourite organisation in the world. How they sit with a straight face sometimes.
I know, because I think even Olympic officials look at FIFA and go,
"Hang on a second, you're ruining it for everybody."
Tone it down, guys. I always
Big
like
hello, everyone. Enjoy Qatar.
I always like the NRL integrity unit is another. Great one, very great one. So there's a bunch of them like that are really
24 hours
good.
a day they're working.
So it seems that they've got away with it. So it seems like it's done, it's all over. Everyone goes back to their lives,
Retire.
right? Yep. Except that day, one of the players, that day they're land back in Spain.
If you tell me, is this a whistleblower?
One of the players packages up his uniform, his gold medal, and money he'd received while Sydney, and he mails them to the Paralympic headquarters in Bond, and that's how it shows up. And you'd think, is it guilt that's got to one of them, that one of them has finally gone,
You'd hope so.
What we did was not good.
Yeah.
Well, anyone who's run a business knows that you want to do your background checks when you employ someone
Yes.
pretty well,
Sure.
right? Like, it's easy to check their CV, but you often want to ring around and ask people who might know them in the industry or something. You want to be thorough.
Which is why I've got 5 aliases, by the way. Good luck. Yep.
You really want to do that because you don't want to say, like, hire someone to fake being intellectually disabled to defraud the Paralympics.
Listen to
only
yourself.
to find out that they're an investigative reporter.
Oh, no.
Because that would be embarrassing, right?
Originally, this whole thing was...
Yeah, so when the word went out, can we get people, and it went out sort of thing, one of the problems they had...
Oh, dear.
I mean, it is a sad world where you can't hire someone to defraud the Paralympics and take their word for it.
How dare you? I trusted you.
Yeah, I trusted you. I believed you. I gave you a chance.
We were all in this together.
So there's a guy called Carlos Ribagorda who is one of the 10 players who fakes the impairment and goes through it. Ribagorda is an investigative journalist and he'd been invited to train with the team 5 months out from the Sydney Games and he immediately sees the chance for a scoop. So rather than blowing the lid at this point, he goes, I will try out for the team and see if I can get on it.
Yeah.
And do it, and
Then we got a big story.
Then I've got a huge story, and I can prove they did it and everything. Rather, they can deny it at that point and say, no, you got to. It was through So he turns up to training. He gets asked through a contact of a contact, and I think he's a bit vague on how that happened to just not give that away. But he shows up to try it for the team, and the only things he had to do were 6 push-ups and have his blood pressure taken, which I think even you and I could almost do.
I'm in. Where's my gold medal?
No IQ test, he says. They don't care about that. But I think the 6 push-ups is weirder.
In a row?
Like, why 6? Like, what's the point of asking someone to do 6 push-ups? Like, it's not a high enough number to prove any fitness.
Doesn't prove anything.
And
You're alive.
your arms work. Like, that's
well
it.
Done. Next.
So I love that. He says, this is his quote. This is a quote from Ribagorda. He says he says there were 5 months of training, with not a single disabled person in sight. The 2 genuinely disabled people came from outside Madrid. He reveals this later. He says as he trained, he began to wonder what was motivating the men around him. Like the others who were doing it. Yeah. And he said, he thought to himself, they can't all be doing it for a journalistic scoop, which creates this scenario that I love. The idea is, imagine this all happened and then we found out all 10 were journalists thinking they all had a scoop. And that was the only reason it happened.
But he's lucky, the timing of it. So he's an investigative journalist. He's doing it. But what if someone had busted him before he got to write the story?
Well, that's right.
And then he goes, no, I was a journalist. I was always writing a story.
Yeah.
No, you're not.
Of course
you're
you
just
were.
over here.
Of course you were.
Yeah. Wow.
So he begins to wonder what they're doing, and he's sort of looking around going, this is amazing. He said, aside from the money, he said, I think people saw it, one, as a free trip to Australia.
Yeah, sure.
They're getting paid. But there was also, he said, weirdly, some pride in having the Spanish team strip. Like, I think these guys started to live out some of their sporting fantasies that suddenly, they're doing it, which is amazing to me because I just can't see why that would. But it just shows the human ability to rationalise your behaviour on any level. He keeps in touch with his editor by email.
The editor, the paper knew he was doing this all along.
His editor at Capital, which is a Spanish finance magazine, he has been talking to him all through it. And once the gold medal's secured, they decided we're ready to write this tell-all story. But they were under no illusions of the scale of this story, because they knew, just as Vicente knew that by winning gold medals, you actually weirdly helped the Paralympic movement. More money came in, which meant more money for grassroots and everything. But there was a weird truth to that, right? As much as it's horrendous, success brings in more money. So, there was some truth in that. You're right. It's very hard. But they also knew on the flip side that writing this thing saying the Paralympics is corrupt and not and he'd learnt over there that Ribagorda had learnt over there, not just in the Spanish team, he thought it was pretty widespread, that this would blow up the Paralympic movement. So he knew that it wasn't, in some ways they felt bad. So they prepared the headline, Fraud at the Paralympics, as well as the front cover of the magazine. And it outlines not only the cheating at the Sydney Paralympics, but it outlines the Spanish team cheating at the preceding World Championships in Brazil and the Iberian Cup in Portugal.
Is it contained to basketball?
Well, no, we'll get to that. So very in the main on this one, but it has big flow-on effects because there are suspicions in other sports too. He laid out how Spain had deliberately recruited athletes who were not intellectually impaired to win medals and gain more sponsorship. He says there's a lack. He criticised the IPC for complete lack of checks and claims some athletes.
Hang on, there's six push-ups. How dare you?
But this is all about how to prove you're intellectually disabled is just the IPC, the Paralympic Committee, is just not even asking countries. They just go, I take you on your word.
Sure.
So he bags them as well. And he criticised the lack of any checks about this. And he claims that some athletes in other categories, such as track and field, table tennis, and swimming, were also neither intellectually nor physically impaired. So there's just a bunch of people competing at the Paralympics who shouldn't be there, basically.
It's incredible.
So he goes on this. He says, of the 200 Spanish athletes at Sydney, at least 15 had no type of physical or mental handicap, and that they didn't even pass medical or psychological examinations. So and then he says, it's not limited to Spain. If you think it's limited to Spain, he said,
sure.
He writes, I couldn't believe it when I was told that the whole Paralympics movement was a farce. The editor, Carlos Salas, says later that printing the story was one of the most unpleasant exclusives I've ever published in my life.
Dear.
So the fallout of this is that Vicente begins protesting he's innocent. He says it's very sad, but there was no bad intent. Straight away.
So he's acknowledging he did it?
He starts off by saying, I didn't know. I had no involvement in checking the medical records.
I just upset about this as you are.
I took it on the word. But the pressure all is building up. So he's forced to resign. He keeps trying to protest his innocence. He says, if someone wants to cheat, it's difficult to detect. It's easy to pretend you have little intelligence, but the opposite is difficult. Right? So, so Vicente is moved. The IPC, the International Paralympic Committee, they then say, well, we are in trouble because we haven't put any verification on the individual countries' checks for this.
Yeah, right.
But they sort of, they don't really want to be in trouble for it. So they try and blame it all on Spain, like one bad apple, doing that. So they say it's only just one sport. It was just the Spanish team. That's it. There's no more we need
Totally
to look into
trustworthy
this.
otherwise, yep.
But the pressure keeps coming because you need to put in the checks then. So the IPC's next decision in December 2000, they just ban all intellectual athletes from the Paralympics.
Well, that's a poor result.
They just
isn't
go,
it?
none of you are allowed to be
Like
in
it's
it
their
anymore.
fault.
Yeah.
Like they're the untrustworthy.
So all the athletes, like Siobhan Payton, who's a 6-time Australian gold medal winning swimmer, says, I can't understand why athletes such as myself must pay for the sins of a few Spanish basketballers who tried to cheat. We've done nothing wrong. And there's
Correct.
a whole outpouring of this that, you've punished
The wrong people here.
two people sped so we all can't drive cars anymore kind of thing. Like it's that overreaction.
Yeah.
But the IPC's been so embarrassed that they just go, nah, and they're not confident in their system. So they decide it's all too hard. We're just not going to do it anymore. It's all over. And so they don't let them come back, I think, until 2012.
Okay.
So 12 years in the wilderness for all these athletes.
And what's the criteria now? What's changed?
Well, now there's a much more rigorous,
Is it still up to
auditing.
individual countries, or do they have to?
No, I think the IPC also do checks and everything too, so it's much more
you have to
rigorous.
fail
than it
an
was.
exam,
Like,
basically,
no,
instead of passing it, you have to fail this one. Yes, I failed.
Well, like you said, you have to enjoy Big Bang Theory and a few things like that, and then you're in. That's the main thing. Ken, how many episodes can you get through? It takes even longer, 13 years for Vicente and the various players to face court. Vicente's found guilty of fraud, and he's fined, wait for it, it's a big number given he's got a £5 million
She's got boats,
money.
5 houses.
$7,729 Australian.
Oh, wow.
Not much at all, right?
And let that be a lesson to you.
Yeah, he has to return Australian $203,000 roughly of government subsidies that the Federation previously received, which is chicken feed in the store of this. When he pleads guilty to this, after earlier protesting to get this deal, all the charges against the players are all dropped. So they never faced.
They go about
any
their
of this.
business.
Yeah, so basically they get a slap on the wrist, but the other athletes all get 12 years in the wilderness.
It's incredible.
And the thing about this story...
That's life. That
is how life always works.
It's like inquiry.
It's like the banking inquiry.
Every banking inquiry.
Everyone goes broke. No bank goes to jail.
Yeah, well, the interest rates go up and they get bonuses.
Yeah.
It's like, I just don't understand how no one's held to account.
Yeah.
There. I just need to go and watch this game now. I want to go and watch the Russia-Spain, gold medal match, because I bet you it's going to blow me away.
And this was, to me, the moment when I heard this story is I realised there is not all you need to cheat. Like it used to be like you'd think people would cheat for money or glory or fame or all these sort of things. All you need to cheat in life is people and something to win. That's all you need. That's the only conditions. Like, for people to do this is like not only the sort of there's the lowest of the low element too, but you want to just go, why?
Lying and cheating is generally a sign of intelligence anyway. So you know what I mean? So you're actually proving how smart you are.
Yeah.
My God.
So it just shows you there's nothing, but it is one of the most amazing things. But, the thing about someone being an investigative journalist hired, if it hadn't been for that, they probably would have got away with it.
It's a funny one to embed yourself in, though, isn't it? 'Cause you could be like a wartime journalist, or you could fight financial, you can some massive fraud on the people.
Yeah.
Nah, I am going to spend a year pretending to be disabled.
And he played the gold medal game.
And
It goes all the way through.
There should be. Is there a movie of this?
There's been.
Come on.
There was a movie that someone did. I can't remember who it was, but it was sort of based on a story like this.
Starring Dustin Hoffman, Sean
I think it
Penn,
was someone
everyone who's all
from Jackass was in it. So there has been.
Johnny Knoxville. Those guys, they'll struggle to hit 70 on the IQ. They'd be perfectly cast.
I know. How you could
You'd
find
have to go
10
and find
people.
these, like the Jordan documentary, but with the same gravitas.
Yeah.
But interviewing guys who pretended to be disabled and have them talk seriously about.
They talk really they talk about the games. Yeah, I knew I was open. What from that point?
What was your greatest moment? Or when we cut our lead from 50 to 17 and we did it in a half. Like, what am I watching? Well done. Titus, you've done it again. Everybody, please go and research that. You'll find that to be 100% true. It feels unbelievable. But that's the Olympic spirit. Thank you, Titus.
We're on all the socials. Follow us there. If you'd like to leave a review on iTunes, it helps us out. And if you've got an idea for a story you'd like us to do or got some feedback, send an email to us. We're even on the electronic mail. It's info@sportsbazaar.com. See you next week.
Cheers.